Hello and welcome to Newsmakers for this Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. I'm Louie Butko. Thank you for joining us today. And this year marks 100 years of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And all year, the RCAF Foundation has been celebrating the impact the Air Force has made in the last century while looking to inspire the next generation of aviation leaders for the next 100 years. And for more on the work of the foundation, I'm very pleased to be joined by the founding CEO, Jeremy Diamond. And November, obviously an important time to remember a lot, but this year a bit more special with the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force.
For sure. I mean, we often talk about remembrance and thinking about our veterans and our military history for not even a day a year. It's really for about a minute or 2 minutes a year. And so at our organization, the RCAF Foundation, we're trying to tell those stories the whole year round. So this year, 2024, being the centennial, the 100-year anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force, has been an extra special time to be able to share the stories of the past, but also engage those that may not know a lot about this time in our history, and also those that are thinking about going into the future, thinking about maybe they'll join the Air Force or get into aviation themselves.
Now, when this foundation was founded, you were obviously looking at the 100th anniversary because it is relatively new. Tell us a little bit about it and how it got started.
Yeah, we started it during COVID in the fall of 2020. We launched spring of 2021 from my basement with no email address, no bank account, no logo, with the eye on 2024. But using 2024 as a milestone, but not a destination. We're not folding shop in a couple of weeks and moving on to the next thing, but we wanted to use it as a touchstone, as that bright star in the future. And we wanted to make sure that by the time we got to the centennial, that we had some great content, some great storytelling opportunities, and that we were helping young people along the way. And there's so many young people that are in STEM programs that are talking about going into aviation, and so we can get some of them to move into the Air Force, some of them to go into aerospace, and maybe they'll be the next ones that go to Mars. That was the intention of the foundation when it started.
Why was it needed? Because you figure there's a lot of military history out there. There's a lot of organizations who are doing this work that are telling the stories. Why was a foundation needed for the Air Force?
Yeah, it wasn't one like this, though. So the Army has something similar, but the Air Force didn't. So being our own registered charity, being separate and distinct from the Air Force, but supporting the Air Force at the same time was unique before we started. So we're our own separate charity, so we can think of an idea, go get some money for it and do it, but we're there right on the side of the Air Force to say, what do you need us for? Where can we support? Where can we work with cadets? Where can we bring some people like the commander, the deputy commander, or some of the cadre at the Air Force into the work that we're doing that maybe isn't so easy when you're part of a government or military organization? It's a lot easier as a separate charity.
This is near and dear to your heart. Tell us your connection to the RCAF.
Yeah, I have a grandfather who served in the RCAF during the Second World War. He was stationed in Gander, Newfoundland. Says when he was alive, he would told me that he was just a bartender. But for many years, I built digital archives and interviewed hundreds of veterans in other positions with other organizations, and so many of them downplayed their involvement and their participation. So I'm pretty sure he did as well. But it is quite striking whenever I see a picture of him that's sort of behind me in some of the Zoom calls, that he's the same age then as my daughter is now. Wow. 19 years old in 1943. And so it's incredible what such a young nation, but also such a young group of people did during that particular conflict.
What sort of work does the foundation do?
Well, I think we're kind of twofold. One is we want to tell the stories of the 100 years of the Air Force. So that could be through books, through digital, through events, through creating opportunities for those that serve to tell their stories. So the past. But we also want to talk about the present and the future. So how do we engage with classrooms? How do we engage with post-secondary that have aviation, aerospace programs within their university, and those students to think about how we support them as they go on in their journey. So we're not a museum. We don't collect artifacts. Please do not send your artifacts and your old photos and medals to the RCAF Foundation. They can go to the War. They can go to the War Museum. They can go to local museums, and happy to connect you. But we'll tell the stories that come to us in best-selling books and other opportunities. But I think what we want to be thinking is as much about the last 100 years is about the next 100 years. That when the RCAF, long past you and my time, is celebrating their bicentennial, there are going to be all kinds of incredible stories to tell about those that joined up because they heard about what they can do today.
So how is that outreach to, you mentioned post-secondary, they're obviously very different. You going into schools and talking about, again, inspiring people, letting them know the history. Post-secondary, a little bit different, because it sort of sounds like a recruitment effort. Is it?
It's not.
Okay,
it's
so
not.
what are you doing there then?
Yeah,
if,
so
it's not recruitment, which is what the RCAF would do,
They
or
can
the
do that.
Canadian military would do, what would you do then?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're looking at those students 18 to 25 that are in a STEM program in post-secondary with plans to go into aviation and aerospace. So that could be anything. You don't have to be wanting to go into the Air Force. You could be wanting to go into aerospace engineering. You could want to be going into mechanical engineering. You could be in a math program but have a grandfather or an aunt that served and you're thinking maybe I want to go into the Air Force. So we do a scholarship program. We provide $75 to $100, $1,000 grants or awards, I guess, to them. And it just gets them a little bit ahead, a little bit thinking about, well, you have a bit more support. I think I'm going to do a postgraduate degree in so-and-so, or I think I may consider joining the Air Force or seeing what that process looks like. So we're not pushing them in any one direction. We want to try and make sure that we're supporting whatever their career goals may be. And man, we're short in skilled trades in this country. We're short in those individuals that would consider joining the Air Force in this country. So we're hoping anybody that we speak to through our scholarship program helps them go in that direction.
Yeah, we just saw a story this week about recruitment to the Canadian military, saying a lot of people doing it as a second income at this point, just to try and get people involved and be a part of the military.
Yeah, and I think that's changed so much from the generation that we just talked about. But even the generation from when we were in Afghanistan, when you was on the front pages almost every day, recruitment was high, people wanted to be involved, wanted to serve. When it's not on the front pages, or it's not on the front pages for, say, good reasons, that recruitment effort's a bit tougher. And so how do we make that process a lot smoother? You're walking into a bureaucratic process in many cases. So if you need somebody and somebody's willing to do it, you got to make it easy. And so we're hopefully speaking to some of those people that as a 19 or 20 or 21-year-old, they're thinking that this could be their future. 100
years this year. Tell us how the Royal Canadian Air Force came to be.
Yeah, it wasn't as exciting as some of the other things in our history, American history, British history. It was a royal assent in 1924 by the King to make it the Royal Canadian Air Force. Before it was the Canadian Air Force. But before that, during the First World War, 1914 and 1918, many Canadians would have served and flown in the early days of flight with the Royal Flying Corps. So Royal being in England and the UK. So when we think about Vimy and we think about Pashtun, we think about battles of the First World War, just that time, this was pre-Royal Canadian Air Force. So we saw a number of people and pilots and aircraft during that time eventually morph into 1924 having royal ascent into becoming the Royal Canadian Air Force. And then in 1968, each of the Navy, Army, and Air Force came together as a unification to become the Canadian Forces, or Canadian Armed Forces, we know it today, CAF. And so we're seeing and looking back at that history, even before 1924, Billy Bishop, William Barker, some of those names that we may have heard, that wasn't even the Royal Canadian Air Force yet, but it was, say, the precursor of 1924.
Now, the importance of the RCAF, obviously, in wartime, we understand what they did, and even, like I said, prior to its ascension there. But today, what's the importance of the RCAF? How important is the organization?
Well, it's essential. I mean, first of all, this is a Canadian institution that has incredible history, as we've talked about, but one that I don't think many people understand the different types of roles that you can have within the Air Force. It's not just going flying a plane. There is search and rescue, right? Jump out of a plane with a parachute on to save those in need. There's mechanical engineers. There's communications and signals. There's all kinds of different roles that we can play in peacetime as the Air Force, but also when those are are in need, the Air Force is the one that's called in many cases. Think about what is needed up north in the Arctic, in areas of that are quite remote. The Air Force is dispatched to go and help those people. And so I think like the Air Force, like the military in general, without a war, they're kind of invisible until they're not. Yeah. And I think the Air Force is a good example of that. And I think also in southwestern Ontario, especially in Toronto and bigger cities, we don't have a presence of the Air Force. There's not blue uniforms walking around that you can ask somebody, hi sir, hi ma'am, what do you do? Yeah. So we're trying to help bring that out and be able to teach and educate those to say, you know what, this could be something I'd like to go into because of what you just shared with me.
So just you're saying the presence in base cities, Trenton, places like that, Petawawa, Borden, they would be there. They'd be in the streets. You'd see them.
Right. And how do you get them to other cities to have more of a presence? So we're trying to do that. Yeah, we're trying to do that. And so at Union Station in Toronto, we brought an F-18 jet out. It was a cockpit jet out there, and it was an opportunity for us to be able to have people shake the hand, ask them what they did, and if they wanted to recruit the individuals from the Air Force and say, you know, this is what you could do, then that's great. But where else do you get a chance to do that unless you're coming from a base community, a military family? So that was just super cool for so many people. We
were just looking at the footage there from Union Station. Talking about this book, you have been across the country.
And then some.
Yeah, then and there and back, coast to coast to coast to coast. Tell us a little bit about Pathway to the Stars. Tell us about this book.
Pathways was an idea that we had right at the beginning to be able to share stories of the 100 years. So there's over 100 stories there for the 100-year anniversary of people, events, and machines. So the three things that we think of when you think of the Air Force. So you want to learn about a plane? Planes are in there. You want to learn about incredible people? They're in there as well. And then where have we been? What have we done as an Air Force? That's in there as well. So more of a coffee table style book, national bestseller. We've sold 9,000 copies in a year. Wow. We've been to, I think, 8 or 10 cities in the last year. And then we are just about finished self-publishing a kid's book.
That's
so
awesome.
A version for grade 6. Yeah. Aviation's in the curriculum in every province in Canada. So if you think that it's important to get kids involved at 18 or 19, it's really important to get them involved at 10 or 11. And so that's going to be our major push for the new year.
And one thing I noticed you guys did right away, didn't waste any time, women in aviation. You made a point to highlight the amazing work that women have done in aviation going back 100 years worth of history. That seemed like it was a priority to make sure that any foundation you started was recognizing the role that women played in the Air Force.
100%. I mean, I think too much of our history, especially our military history, is about dead white guys. And so to be able to highlight some of the incredible contributions that women have made, from Elsie McGill to Tammy McGrath, who's a search and rescue, to the Parabels, and all featured in this book, on our podcast series and video series that we do, to bring out some of those unknown and, let's face it, underrepresented, but very deserved stories out in the forefront is a wonderful, and absolutely was a conscious effort to tell those stories.
Founding CEO, why?
Yeah,
why? This seems like a lot of work.
Yeah,
it seems like I don't think you're not making millions off of this.
No,
I'm going to guess here.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for the money, but so why did you get involved and why you? Why were you the right person to start?
Yeah, my very quick origin story is that I had a really great high school history teacher who inspired me to think about history as a career choice. That is not on the list of lawyer and doctor and plumber and electrician. Historian or public historian, in my case, is not on that list. But sharing the stories of our country's history to the public, promoting and presenting it to audiences that may not know about it, there's always going to be work like that in Canada. And the Air Force, close to my heart, but also with the centennial coming up, with my grandfather that served, with stories that I thought more Canadians should know about, and also to give real respect to this important Canadian institution. It all seemed to be the right time to do that. And I think it's proven to be a good choice, not only for me, but to be able to build an organization that we hope has an important legacy in the future.
Absolutely. What has the response been? What have you felt from, to do it during COVID, 2020, 2021? Here you are 3 years into it. What have you felt, and what's maybe been a struggle of getting this up and off the ground?
Sure.
No pun intended.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the sky's the limit, Louie. So what I think one thing that I found that very positive is meeting the people in this book. This book is from 100 years ago, but some of the stories are from 20 years ago and 30 years ago. So these are living. These individuals are doing well and sharing their stories, and are so touched that we would even consider telling their story as part of this incredible publication, and then doing video content and highlighting them in some other formats. So it's always about the people. The highlighting the people that have made this incredible impact over the years in the Air Force. That for sure is number one. It's always been the work that I've done. I mean, the struggle is like any charitable organization. We're not, although in my mind we're an essential service. To others, we're not an essential service as a charity. So we're not a disease, and we're not a hospital. And so in Canada, to be able to raise enough money to start a charity from scratch and to be able to create some real sustainability is always a challenge. But that going in, and I love it, and I feel passionate about it, and that's half the battle when you go out asking for money.
So outside of giving you money, buying the book, not you money, giving the foundation money, buying the book, how can people support? What would you like to see people? What would be, if somebody was watching this, somebody was listening, what tangible steps could they take to help this organization grow and to learn more?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, buying the book is great, making a donation is great, but we'd also always want to hear from people about their personal stories, because in some cases, the personal stories of people have turned into content that we create digital exhibitions or podcasts or things on our website. So we want to tell let's say the real story. We want to tell the story of those that are connected directly and personally to the Air Force, and also those that have had an amazing experience in the aviation kind of sector writ large. And so would love to hear from them, would love to meet them in person, would love to hear from them on social, love to hear from them by email, and that keeps us going and keeps us motivated to continue doing what we're doing.
We'll throw the link up to the website in our podcast description here. I did want to bring up Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame Museum. You're a historian. So on this date in 1982, 42 years ago, the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame officially opened. You are the chair there. Speaking of important part of history, I know it's a game versus military.
Sure.
But what that means, and to see 42 years, I know you saw that on Facebook today.
Yeah.
What that means to celebrate Canadian baseball.
Baseball and history have been and will always be intertwined, right? So as a baseball person, somebody that played competitive baseball and coached competitive baseball, and as a historian and likes to tell stories, I mean, it works out pretty well. So the Hall of Fame started in Toronto. It's now in St. Mary's and has been for over 20 years, sort of a smaller community near Stratford, Ontario. And it's a great opportunity to do some of the same things, tell stories, share some of those narratives, and really highlight some of those underserved and underrepresented stories that we may not know about. The history of baseball, which is so ingrained in Canadian history. We are not only a hockey nation. Baseball in Canada has been going on for nearly 200 years and started very nearby to St. Mary's. So our little museum in St. Mary's is one, but also our website and our digital footprint to tell the stories across the country is really exciting.
You mentioned being inspired by a high school history teacher. Again, historian is not one of those career paths that is traditionally offered. It's not, how do you get there? What's the path to get there? How important was that, and what was it about him or her? Mm-hmm. What was it about your teacher that inspired you, that made you the person you are today?
Yeah, well, there was one moment in our class where we were teaching, it wasn't even Canadian history, we were learning, it was at the time modern Western civilizations. You're talking about the French Revolution, things like that. He slammed the door, he jumped up on the desk, and he recited very loudly, bellowed, I guess you'd say, the French national anthem at the beginning of our unit about talking about the French Revolution. And when you go through high school, still today, and have kids in high school still today, there's some teachers that stand out for doing things like that, making an impact, making it memorable, and there's some that you just forget. And I walked out of there thinking, this is the path that I like to explore. I like watching documentaries. I like reading about history. I have this great teacher who's also passionate about it. I wonder if I could do something, with this, and then followed that path and worked in historic sites and museums and archives. And you sort of build in a position like that, or a career like that, you kind of build your own suite of things that you like and that you're good at and that you're passionate about. You don't go to school school to become this. So it's all led me to different organizations highlighting the anniversary of Vimy Ridge and interviewing veterans and doing all things like that. This has been an opportunity to highlight again a Canadian institution that we may not know about and do it in a way that's exciting and engaging and interesting as well as educational.
What would you say to someone who doesn't want to live in the past, who doesn't, it doesn't affect me, I don't care about history? Because there are people out there. There are people who, just can't be bothered to watch documentaries, to read books. As a historian, does that offend you? But what would you say to that person?
I would say it offends me. I think that everybody has history, whether you watch a documentary, you like old planes or old tanks from military history, or you like baseball and you think about that. Look at your family. What did your parents do? What did your grandparents do? If they're new to Canada at some point, where did they come from? What was their life like then? What do you learn from them and their stories and their letters or their recordings or their conversations on Sunday afternoon, watching TV or going for a walk? That's history. That's your history. So you don't have to be interested, I don't think, and I'm expecting everybody to be interested in the types of history that we're doing at the foundation. But history is within all of us, and to be able to ask, especially the generations past, about how they came to be and how they came physically to where they live now, and what their struggles were, and what their excitement was about when they were young. Ask those questions, have those conversations, because at some point you may not be able to have them anymore.
Those who don't learn their history are bound to repeat it. Is that an adage that you would stand by?
For sure. Yeah, we hear that a lot and look around. I mean, there is many examples, not only whether we talk about military history or others. History does repeat itself, and we absolutely should and don't do enough learning about the past. Whether you have an interest in it or not, it is something that we live with every day.
I couldn't help but notice. I know you mentioned you got a couple of teenagers. You're wearing are those RCF?
No. Yeah.
Are those RCF friendship bracelets that you got there?
No, they are just regular bracelets made by kids and nieces and nephews.
I had to call you. I wondered. Where can people find the book? Where can people get more information about what you do?
Best way to find the book and find out more about us is go to RCAFfoundation.ca. We sell the book right through there. All proceeds of the book go directly to our scholarship program. It's also available on Amazon and Indigo and anywhere that you buy books. But we like to drive people to the site. You can see other content there and learn a little bit more about our work. And also just drop us a note and let us know how you're connected to the Air Force and aviation in your family.
Jeremy, I appreciate this. I know obviously it's we're past Remembrance Day, but it's important to honor our history every single day, especially in November, but especially this year, marking 100 years of the RCAF. So thanks for making the time.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
All right, my thanks to Jeremy Diamond, CEO of the Royal Canadian Air Force Foundation, for joining me today. My thanks to you for listening or watching or however you found us. And hey, while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to CHCH Podcast so you never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including Sportsline with Bubba O'Neill. I want to thank Mike Corsten for directing today's show. And one more time, thanks you for tuning in. From all of us here at CHCH, I'm Louie Butko. Have a great day.